sick and tired, living in a town filled with narrow minds and hate.
Hello, thank you so much for tuning in to A Spoonful of Comfort. I am Claudine Jackson. I am your host for A Spoonful of Comfort, and I'm trying to remind you and me that we all have comfort to offer to each other. God bless you. May the grace of God be with you. Grace be unto you, and peace from God the Father and our Lord Jesus Christ. And may grace and peace be multiplied unto you. We need grace and peace and comfort, because we're not getting it from our leaders. So we have to do it for each other. So remember, you have a spoonful of comfort. A spoonful of comfort is the minimum. A spoonful of anything is the minimum amount that you can give. So share a spoonful of comfort with someone, especially this month, which is Mother's Day coming up this month. I am the director of the Purvis Jackson Jr. Autism Foundation, and we made an offer to parents of children with handicaps to contact us for help for Mother's Day. Because if you're the parent of a child with a handicap, I know that you need help. I also know that you are worthy of help. We did get a response from a few parents that sent a letter to the post office box. Our post office box is Post Office Box 04422, Detroit 48204, Michigan. That's the Purvis Jackson Foundation. Post Office Box 04422, Detroit 48204, Michigan. But now that Mother's Day is almost here, we don't have time for you to send a letter to the post office box. So if you need help, the Purvis Foundation still wants to help you. You can contact me by email at Jackson Claudreen, Claudreen, Jackson Claudreen at sbcglobal.net. And I'll be glad to respond to you. I know that being the parent of a child with a handicap, as my son that has autism is now 42, and his father, Purvis Jackson, who was the bass singer of the Spinners, was the one that was the foundation for the foundation. Purvis is no longer with us, but the other Purvis is still here, and the foundation is still going on. And speaking of the Spinners will be performing this coming week, this coming Saturday, May the 12th, at the Masonic Temple. Now, well, they just call it the Masonic now. They're not saying temple. The Spinners have been performing since the 60s, and they are still performing. They still have put on a good show, and it's amazing that their music is the kind of music that lasts down through the years. There's nothing in their music that hurts your ears or makes you want to turn the radio off or the TV. They have good, clean music. The Spinners are going to be joined by the Floaters, Al Hudson and One Way, and Enchantment. And it's going to be a good show. And hopefully you'll be able to come out and see that show. Also on May the 12th is the Mother's Day brunch at New Mount Vernon Missionary Baptist Church, where I am a deacon. We have invited parents of children with handicaps to the Mother's Day brunch. We will pay for your brunch and give you a gift. If that's not what you want to do, we will do something else for you. It's up to you. If you contact the Purvis Foundation and let me know what we can do for you for Mother's Day, we will be very glad to help you. Now, We did get a few letters from parents that wanted help, and we we bought a crib for a baby that needed a crib, and we also kept a couple people's utilities from being shut off. Now, when PJ was smaller and we were separated, I was separated from my husband. I went through having my utilities cut off. Now, I don't know whether I had missed the notice or if the electric company had sent me a letter saying your electricity would be cut off on such and such a day. I had missed all that. I don't know how I missed it. But like I said, when you're the parent of a child with a handicap, you have so many things on your mind. So my electricity got cut off. I did not know that it was going to get cut off that day. It got cut off on a Friday. And like I say, Purvis and I weren't living together then, but Purvis came over, and I didn't tell him the electricity was off. He came over to the house. The electricity was off, and Purvis Jr. was running around the house trying to turn on lights. He was flicking light switches and turning the TV and trying to get some light. And I really felt bad, and so did Purvis. Purvis said, this didn't have to happen. You did not have to let the lights get cut off. Why didn't you let me know? I said, I would have let you know. I didn't know. So it was a Friday, and we're talking about in the 80s. So back then, you could not get it turned back on immediately. I don't know now whether you can get it turned back on immediately or not. But we were going to have to be without electricity for the weekend. So he said, you two can't stay here in the cold with my son trying to turn on lights and not knowing what has gone wrong. So pack up his clothes, pack your clothes, you're coming home with me. So I went back to the house that Purvis and I had shared together, and I had to admit, he's not all bad. You know, when you break up with someone, you think of how they hurt you and the things that they did. And I had to admit, he's not all bad. He was so upset about us being without electricity, as he was upset about us being without anything that PJ or I needed. So I had to say, he's not all bad. I have to give him credit for being a wonderful father. But I just want you to know that I have experienced going without. So I know about parents of children with handicaps having to go without. I don't want them to have to go through what I went through. I want to say thank you to the donors of the Purvis Foundation. Thank you so much for donating and being generous with the Purvis Foundation, because without generous donors, we would not be able to do what we do. Now, I see the people that the Purvis Foundation helps, you don't see, but I see them, and I have a responsibility to them. I do not want to just be, I am thankful that I am one of the more fortunate. God has blessed me greatly. I will never forget all the glorious blessings that God has given me. So I am one of the more fortunate. My son is one of the less fortunate. So doesn't God expect those of us who are more fortunate to help the people who are less fortunate? And like I was saying, I see these people that need help from the Purvis Foundation. You don't see them, but thank you so much for all the help you've given me. Thank you for helping people with handicaps. Our slogan is, that which you do for the least of my brethren, you do it also unto me. So I'm going to take a short break now, and I'll come back. Hopefully you'll stay with me through the break. And I want to remind you that you don't have to see eye to walk hand in hand. You don't have to, you can agree to disagree. And you don't have to be disagreeable when you disagree. You can disagree without being disagreeable. So thank you so much for sticking with me. I will be back in a couple of minutes.
When I was 17, I ran away from home and from everything I had ever known. I was sick and tired, living in a town filled with narrow minds and hate.
Thank you for sticking with me on A Spoonful of Comfort. I want to share some scriptures with you that helped me as I was going through my depression about my son. And I say that I felt like I was in the wilderness and no one knew what I was going through. But now on the radio, when you listen to the church services on Sunday and they say they're for the sick and shut in, they're also for the caregivers of the sick and shut in. Because here I am sitting, feeling shut in, trapped in the wilderness. And I was listening to the radio, and Councilman Peoples, he was also a pastor. He was doing his radio show that day. And he said, although you might feel like you're in the wilderness, remember, Jesus is in the wilderness with you. Well, that was just what I needed to hear. And I remembered that. If you feel like you're in the wilderness, life is full of mountains and valleys. If you're in the valley, it's only for a season, and Jesus is there with you, and he's going to help you. I want to share this scripture with you. This is Psalm 40, verses 1 and 2. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit and out of the muck and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. That is one of my favorite scriptures. It was put in a different way in one of our gospel songs. It says, he picked me up and turned me around and placed my feet on solid ground. God has blessed me through this child that I was so upset that had come into my life that I thought it was a punishment. So back in 1975, when Purvis Jr. was born, that was the year they quit putting people with behaviors such as Purvis Jr.'s. They quit putting them in institutions. I was trying to find an institution for him because I thought, well, that's what you do. I did not know that the year he was born was the year they had to close the big institutions. And when I found out about the conditions in the big institutions, they did the right thing. They needed to be closed. People with behaviors such as my son, he was very aggressive and constant motion and hard to handle, and he screamed all the time. If he were in an institution, he would have been heavily sedated and restrained. I did not know this at the time that I was trying to put him in an institution. So I don't know how far it has come with treatment of people with autism, but they tell me that some of that still goes on. And there are more people being diagnosed with autism, which is amazing to me because I thought that we would be finding less people with autism than more. So the fact that there are more people being diagnosed with autism may mean that some of that is still going on because people don't know what to do in those situations. I did not know what to do in those situations. Even the people in the institutions did not know what to do in those situations. But I was on the state board of directors of the Autism Society of Michigan. Back then it was called MSAC, Michigan Society for Autistic Citizens. And they sent some of us whose children had more challenging behaviors, they sent us to Omaha, Nebraska, to the University of Nebraska Psychiatric Institute to study with Dr. John McGee. Dr. John McGee was in the process of writing a book called Gentle Teaching. So Dr. McGee's book was about how you treat people with difficult behaviors, such as my son. And he taught us to be gentle and calm with them. So working at the Psychiatric Institute, I met other people who had behaviors like that didn't talk, like my son doesn't talk. You have to wonder what is on their mind. I don't wonder what's on his mind anymore, because now that he's older, he takes care of whatever is on his mind. If he wants something to eat, he fixes it. If he wants something to drink, he gets it, but goes to the bathroom. But back then, I did not know what to do. So Dr. John McGee, with Gentle Teaching, became one of my heroes. He said that when you're dealing with a person with a challenging behavior, you have to make the decision of what kind of caregiver you want to be. You don't wait until the person gets you upset. You decide ahead of time how you're going to handle if the person gets you upset. So when I came back from the classes at University of Nebraska Psychiatric Institute, Dr. McGee was one of my heroes. I have his book, Gentle Teaching. I have used a lot of his teachings, and it helped me to be calm with my son. Now, the Jewish Vocational Services, where PJ is a part of their day program now, a lot of their strategies are based on Dr. John McGee and Gentle Teaching. So the more gentle you were with PJ and the kinder you were with him, the easier it was for him to be gentle and kind. And he learned about being gentle and kind. Also, during the time that I was on the state board of directors, it was Michigan Society for Autistic Citizens then. I became a member of Governor Blanchard's advisory committee. Governor Blanchard appointed me as I was called a secondary consumer. He has advisory committees. He had advisory committees. I don't know how many our present governor has, but back then he had over 140 advisory committees to advise him of different aspects of what was going on in the state. So I was a member of the DD Council, which was the Developmental Disabilities Advisory Council. And we did not meet with the governor, but we met with each other, and we made recommendations for what needed to happen for people in my son's condition in the state. And Governor Blanchard used to have brunches every Sunday for the people that belonged on for the people that were on his committees. And we went up to his summer home on Mackinac Island. It's right at the Straits of Mackinac, and it was a beautiful location in Michigan. If you ever want to see some beautiful scenery, Mackinac Island, Traverse City, those are some beautiful locations in Michigan. So bit by bit, I was learning how to deal with my son. I've told you a few autism stories. I'll tell you about an incident that happened with his cab driver. Now, Detroit Public School did a lot for parents of children with handicaps and for children with handicaps. So one of the services they provided was my son was picked up in a cab and taken to the school, and the cab would bring him back home. It was called curb to curb service. Along with having social workers and psychologists to help, they had curb to curb service, so we did not have to worry about transporting our child to school. Well, when the cab would pull up, I would go out and I would go to the porch, and PJ would get out of the cab and come in the house. Well, this one particular day, I went, the cab pulled up, he blew his horn, I opened the door, and this little boy got out of the cab and came running into my house. And he did the same thing that PJ does. He went straight to the refrigerator, only this wasn't PJ. So I thought, I've got to stop the cab driver from pulling off because this is the wrong child. So I ran to the door and waved at the cab driver to come back. And I said, this is the wrong child. But PJ was sitting in the cab, looking out the window, just as content, not even realizing where he was. So he was not aware of his environment. A regular child would have said, oh, this is my house, but PJ didn't. I want to tell you another story about my life with PJ, and this was about a fire that we had. PJ loved French fries, and I was always cooking French fries for him. So I worried about him eating so many French fries, but then I found out that potatoes and pasta increase the serotonin level for people with autism, so it made them feel better. So I said, well, he's eating these potatoes. They not only when he's hungry, but when he needs to feel better. So I felt better about cooking the fries, and I cooked so many of them that I got careless. And one day I walked out of the kitchen with the fries, with the grease getting hot for the fries, and I forgot. And then I started smelling smoke. And when I came back to the kitchen, the pan was on fire, hot grease and all. And I thought that the sink was right across from the stove, and it wasn't far. So I thought I could take the pan from this stove and put it in the sink. Well, I couldn't. It was so hot, I dropped it, and a wall of flame erupted. Oh, I was so scared. I grabbed PJ. Well, I thought I was going to have to grab PJ because I didn't know if he knew about danger. But when the fire erupted, we both ran out of the side door. There was a wall of flame. I was so scared. Now I'm outside, and I'm thinking, I've got to go to a neighbor's house, and I've got to call the fire department, and I'm shaking. I looked through the window, and I didn't see any fire because I said when we ran out, there was a wall of flame. I looked through the window, and I didn't see any fire. And I said, well, before I go call the fire department, let me see. So I went to the side door, and I peeped in. There, not only was there no fire, there was no evidence of fire. The tile in the kitchen, they say it was fire retardant, which I didn't know. So not only was there no fire, there was no smudges, there was no soot. All I had to do was clean up the grease. That's how I know that God is still working miracles in the world. You may say it was a coincidence that I had the right kind of tile. I say it was God working miracles in the world and saving me and PJ, as he has done all of PJ's life. I want to share a poem with you that I wrote during the time that I was going through my depressions. It's called He Is There. He was there for me to lean on when I was tired and weak, when I had cried for many days and couldn't even speak. He was there for me to lean on when I couldn't find my way. He took me in and sheltered me when I had lost the day. When the sorrows of my heart made my spirit to be broken, he was waiting to remind me of the words that he had spoken. He said, if I believed that he would give me anything that I desired in my heart, and now my heart has wings. The beauty he has shown me, I do not know the way to tell you what is there for us when we learn how to pray. When you need someone to lean on, he is there. He will take you in and hold you at his bosom, and you will have a friend. I sought the Lord, and he heard me, and he delivered me from all my fears. It's time for me to sign off. Hopefully, you will tune in next Tuesday at 1:30 for a Spoonful of Comfort. I am Claudrine Jackson, and may the power of God protect you. May the presence of God comfort you, and may the love of God enfold you. Until next week, give someone a spoonful of comfort.